and she would not let me see my daughter unless I was literally at my wife's boyfriend's house. Now, that's pretty challenging, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
to say the
pretty
least.
challenging. And I would go there and endure that discomfort so that I could see my daughter when my daughter was 18 months old. It would yank your heart out, but I did it. The best I could do was a couple times a week because it was so painful.
Right.
But I did it. And, sometimes a father just has to be almost a superman to do the things it takes to stay in his child's life. You have to do those very uncomfortable things without acting out in any way that could be detrimental, right? As you can imagine, I was tempted to act out with my daughter's mother's boyfriend, But that was out of the question because what mattered most was that someday I was going to parent my child as much of the time as my child's mother. And I ended up with a 50-50 parenting arrangement. So it's difficult. When they're small, it is difficult. But sometimes a father just has to bite his lip and bide his time because the older the child gets, the more time the child can spend away from his or her mother. So the visits get longer. And when my daughter was 5 years old, I had my daughter with me for 1 week and with her mother for 1 week. And it started at a point where I could only see my daughter at her mother's boyfriend's house.
Now, another instance where they may have to bite their lip or grin and bear it is when a child order of protection has been filed against them, alleging what usually is, unfortunately, just bogus circumstances to remove the father from the house or try to remove the father from the children's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So how would what can someone in that situation do to help just prepare themselves mentally and to be able to physically see their children?
Yeah, I think statistically they've discovered that 75% of all claims of abuse and domestic violence by divorcing parents and child abuse by divorced fathers, I think they've proved that 75% of that is ungrounded and it never goes anywhere. But it's still an obstacle for fathers to deal with and to overcome. So the first thing that comes to mind is that the father, if he can avoid it, do not get a restraining order. Do whatever it takes so that the court doesn't award the mother a restraining order because that's just difficult. And what was the question here?
It was dealing with the order of protection. Once the bullet is fired or the allegations are made, they can't be withdrawn. I mean, once they're out there, they're out there. How does a father deal with that when he's trying to spend, quality time with his children or trying to get the frequent, continuing, meaningful contact with his children?
Right. Well, if there's been a restraining order issued, then the father has to abide by that. He can, may have to do supervised visitation. He may have to. What I'm thinking right now of some fathers in the network and creative ways that they've come to deal with those issues. One of the ways that fathers in the network avoid those issues is we've got a research project funded right now where fathers of small children are observed by a psychologist as soon as the father discovers he's getting a divorce. We have that father interviewed by a psychologist who observes the father interacting with his children, and the psychologist writes a report stating that the father is a great parent and he's doing a wonderful job with his children. And that kind of eliminates the mother's argument that she needs a restraining order because this man is a danger to the children or a danger to her. Mm-hmm. Because now you have a professional saying this is a great father who's important to this child, and that typically overrides the mother's allegation that the father needs to be away from the child. But if the father's got a restraining order, he's going to have to abide by it. He's going to have to ask for visitation and have it supervised by one of his family members. He may have to ask for exchanges to happen on the police, on the sheriff's department doorstep, all of those kinds of things. Pay for supervised visitation. See his children when his children are at school. See his children when his children are playing after-school sports, things like that.
Now, you mentioned one project dealing with a psychologist, and unfortunately we're running out of time, but I didn't want to run out of time without asking you, are there any other projects that you're currently working on or that may be coming up?
Absolutely. We're working with the Family Wellness Court here in Santa Clara, California. And, you know, for the longest time, the courts would not acknowledge divorced fathers as a resource, and that was always a goal of ours, was to have the courts view the divorced fathers network and the fathers in the network, who are simply divorced fathers who have found ways to avoid conflict with the children's mother. And now the Family Wellness Court is using the fathers in the divorced fathers network as mentors for fathers whose children are involved in child protective services or whose children's mother have had a drug or an alcohol issue, and the children have been removed from the mother and maybe not given to the father. So we're actually mentoring fathers who come into the court at the request of the court to help these fathers stay involved in their children's life. It's a brand new thing. It's just a few months old. But it is a big step forward for us to have the courts finally, and it's only one or two courts, acknowledge that the divorced fathers actually can be a resource for the community.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time. I look forward to hopefully having you as a guest on our show again. And just for the readers, one more time, what is your website?
The website is it's just divorcedfathersnetwork.org.
And then your newest book that's out?
The newest book is The Long Distance Dad, How You Can Be There for Your Child, whether divorced, deployed, or on the road. And it's published by Adams Media, and it's in all the major bookstores.
Well, once again, I appreciate your time. It's definitely been a pleasure and very informative, as I expect that our listeners will probably have some follow-up questions that they can always post on our website, DadsDivorce.com. Thank you once again, Mr. Ashley, for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us today.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate it.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.